Okay, good afternoon. Thank you and welcome to our webinar today on the Kickstart scheme in Wales. My name is David. I'm Project Manager on Social Business Wales, and I'm joined today by Jade Carpenter, who is an employer advisor at the Department of Work and Pensions, Ryan Jones, Development Manager at Coalfields Regeneration Trust, and Sharon Baker-Morris, who's a Voluntary Grant Scheme Development Manager at the Wales Council for Voluntary Action. Just before we start into the main meat of the presentation, I just want to let you know a little bit about some useful links and some support that Social Business Wales and Wales Cooperative Centre has been able to offer over the last 6 months or so. Myself and colleagues have undertaken a lot of research and created a lot of presentations and a lot of supporting information around issues that affect the social business sector over the whole of the pandemic. Recent presentations have been around finance, funding, cash flow, furlough, HR. So please do use those links to find out any information that we think will be helpful for you going through what are extremely difficult times for all of us at the moment. About this webinar, within Social Business Wales, we were really keen to ensure that although we're not actually a gateway deliverer ourselves, we wanted to make sure that the social business sector overall in Wales had the opportunity to have some understanding of what the Kickstart scheme is, what the benefits are of it, and also to meet some of the organisations who are actually delivering it. Now, one of the things I've done as I've been looking for the research in it, is I've realised that there are a lot of organisations delivering on this scheme across Wales. Today we have Coalfields and WCVA with us, which is great. Thank you both for coming along. But also I have got to say that this is available through local authorities, local further education deliverers, and through some social businesses themselves. In the southeast of Wales, we've got Merthyr Tydfil Institute for the Blind and Elite SEA. In Swansea, where I am, we have Swansea YMCA delivering, and in North Wales we have CAIS and GISDA both delivering, and I'm sure there are more as well. So I just wanted to let you know about the range of organisations out there delivering. So moving straight on, I'd like to introduce you to Jade Carpenter. Jade is an employment advisor for the Department for Work and Pensions. Are you there, Jade?
Hiya, yes. Thank you. All right. So yeah, my name is Jade and I'm an employed advisor for Job Centre Plus in South East Wales, my base is. But for the purpose of this this webinar, the programme for Kickstart is a national programme and is from national government. So the details of the programme are available for everybody in the UK. So by you attending the webinar today, so I'd like to thank you for your interest in the Kickstart scheme. It's a brand new scheme, and the scheme was launched following the Chancellor's announcement of a 2 billion fund as part of the Plan for Jobs, reacting to the labour market really as we have it now. We have a lot of people who are now looking at other work, and obviously the hit that the labour market and the employment sector has taken under the COVID-19 pandemic. So in order, you can support the scheme by providing Kickstart work placements. And the Kickstart scheme is introduced to tackle, in essence, to start with, youth unemployment. So this Kickstart scheme is aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds who are claiming universal credit. And this is for customers who are wholly unemployed and not receiving any earnings, 16 to 24-year-olds. Now, with the universal credit, we do get some 16 and 17-year-olds claiming universal credit, and that could be because they have estranged from their families or they've care leavers, and there would be a requirement for them to have support under universal credit. But most of our customer base for universal credit would be 18 to 24-year-olds claiming universal credit. So what the government has asked is that local employers provide work placements, which are 25 hours per week for 6 months. And the work placements are paid through the PAYE system and paid at national minimum wage, and that would be age appropriate because 18-year-olds get paid less than 24-year-olds, and it will also include the national insurance contribution and the auto enrollment pension contribution, 100% paid for. Now, this doesn't, you can increase the hours. So if you are a business who are looking to offer a full-time placement, which we would probably call like a 40-hour week, then there is no restriction on that, but the government will pay for the 25 hours, and then the extra hours or an increase in wages above the minimum wage would be paid out of your own resources. All right. So the funding process, so payments will flow from DWP to an employer or a gateway organisation. And the payments also involve a £1,500 per placement to recognise the investment and to support the participant with training and or equipment to develop the Kickstart participant within that job role. All right, so that could be anything, equipment that they may need. If it could be a laptop, it could be PPE equipment, it could be anything at all that they may need. It could also include any training, so that would be accredited training that you may want to buy in. So if they in like an MVQ in customer service or anything like that the customer would find useful within the job role and to develop that young person over the 6-month placement experience. Okay, they also expect to have some sort of wraparound support. These placements are 6 months. There is no obligation for them to be taken on permanently after that. It is in order to develop that young person to become more employable and to be able to apply for other work. And so there's an employability element for the wraparound service and support for that customer. So by the end, hopefully having their CV updated, gaining confidence with interview techniques, and then maybe increasing their job search activity towards the end of the placement so they can then gain employment elsewhere. All right. The payments then, the reimbursements of the payments then will flow from DWP, who will receive notification from HMRC, Inland Revenue, that a Kickstart placement is in payment, and they will release the funds then to the employer or the gateway organisation. Okay. So from the start of a confirmation placement start, so the employer or gateway will receive £1,500, and then on a monthly basis, the employer or gateway will then give the reimbursement of the 25 hours a week payment, which includes the national insurance contribution and the auto enrollment contribution for pension as well. All right. Now, just the reason why I haven't submitted any slides to support the chat today is because this is such a new program that it is changing all the time. So the most up-to-date information that we have is available on the .gov website, and the links are on the slide for you to have a look at, and then you can sort of have a look at your own circumstances and read about the Kickstart scheme on the .gov webpage. For gateways, the reason why gateways have come into play is because the applications for Kickstart have been banded into a number of 30 plus placements. Now, it's recognised that a lot of SMEs would not be able to provide 30 plus placements. So they've put a gateway process in place where local SMEs who want to apply for maybe 1, 2, 4 or 5 placements can engage with a gateway body who have volunteered to take on this take on this role, and the gateway body then will manage the bid on the SME's behalf. All right, so they will bid directly online through the main Kickstart page for SME businesses. Again, it has to be 30 plus Kickstart placements for the bidding process. Okay. So once the bid is approved, the gateway body will then sign a short grant agreement. All right, and as a company, you will need to provide information to the gateway body in order for them to manage a bid on your behalf. For gateway bodies, they will receive £300 per placement to recognise the additional costs that they will have in order to manage this bid for you. And obviously to recognise the resource that needs to be input in order to manage the subsequent payments of the £1,500 development payment and the monthly reimbursement of the wages to the individual employers as well. All applications are made online through the .gov website. It is an application where a lot of it is free text, so you will put in your information and what roles that you can provide, and it will then go to a panel of approvers who will have a look at each bid, and they will then go through some due diligence checks to make sure that obviously the funding is going to the right place, and then goes to a board then to be approved, and the gateway organisation then will manage the approval and will receive that and manage that and communicate that to you as businesses as well. So as I said, all the information is on the links. It is very general, so any specific questions you may have, I'm happy to sort of take at the end. Is there anything urgent that needs to be asked now?
Jade, I think that's great. If we can carry on through and perhaps get some examples of some of the schemes and then take all the questions at the end, if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Jade. That's great. So I'm going to ask Ryan to make a start now. So Ryan's from Coalfields Regeneration.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Jade, for the introduction and the initial overview. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ryan Jones. I'm a development manager here at the Coalfields Regeneration Trust. Just a bit of background on the trust. We're a UK charity established in 1999, and for the last 20 years we've existed to strengthen and champion coalfield communities. A lot of people know the trust as principally a funder. We still are a funder who's invested over 20 million into the voluntary sector and social enterprises over the last 2 decades, really just supporting efforts to improve the health, employment and skills prospects of people living in former mining communities. And we've been fortunate, really. So we've developed a lot of partnerships over the years. So when we saw the Kickstart scheme, we thought the gateway provider status would be ideal for us to work with these partners. So they become really our first port of call in terms of go-to to try and get some of these 30 placements that we require. Very much later this week, I think we'll be uploading our first cohort of 30 placements. Some of those will be internal, some of those will be external. I've got a few examples to share with you today. And what we look for, maybe our selling point, if you like, as a gateway provider, a number of things. So firstly, we looking to support social enterprises, voluntary organisations that are located in coalfields communities. We recognise the Kickstart scheme is all about the individual, so it's about supporting that person on their journey. So really, we want to ring fence some of this £1,500 that was mentioned earlier for individual training. So we're looking at working with organisations who can ring fence about £500 of the £1,500, which then goes back to upskilling that individual. We're also looking at quality placements, meaningful placements. We've been involved with other schemes in the past, and the best results through that has been for those jobs which resonate really with the young people coming forward. And the Trust is a living wage employer, so we're very keen to work with the host organisation to ensure that any payments are above the national minimum wage. We understand not every organisation can pay the real living wage, but certainly all the Kickstart placements that we'll be putting forward will be paid above the national minimum wage. I've got a few examples. Next slide, Dave, if you can, please. So I just thought it useful just to outline where we are. As we mentioned, we're a three-nation charity. So we've worked with our colleagues in England and in Scotland just to go to some of the organisations that they know in order to get together this first cohort. The majority of the first cohort will start in January 21. And as you can probably see on the slides there, different types of jobs here, real mix, outdoor activities, sport, media, administration, heritage. So we've got some real mix, some real good quality job roles coming forward there. Next slide, David, if you can, please. Just a little bit more detail as an example. So this is one that we'll be hosting internally through the Sport and Health project I manage here at the Trust. And what we're looking at really is developing the person. So it's about getting someone in as an assistant coach initially, training that person up through things like football leaders, ensuring the safeguarding, the DBS checks that are done for this role. So then we can expand into new areas. So it's around us then taking what we do as the Game On sport product into, in this example, the Bridgend Valley. So we really feel that this person coming on board, the Kickstart person, will be a valued employer, just like every other person that comes and joins the Trust. And then just some other examples, next slide, David, if you can, of some of the other roles that we are going to be putting forward. As mentioned, media, IT, customer service, the outdoor environment. And the way we've approached it is that the host organizations have basically adapted their existing job descriptions and job specifications and tailored that towards the universal credit Kickstart applicant in terms of what's required in terms of skills. So just quickly in summary then, so if anyone on the call today is interested in joining us as we upload these Kickstart placements, please feel free to get in touch with us at the Coalfields Regeneration Trust. My contact details are listed there. Just to summarise, so we want to work with organisations located in ex-mining communities who are comfortable with using part of the 1500 as ring fence for training for the individual, and also comfortable with paying above the national minimum wage. So happy to take any questions, but just a quick summary in terms of where we are with the scheme.
That's great. Thank you very much, Ryan. I'll go straight on to Sian, if that's okay. Sian?
Hello, thank you, David, for having me today. So if I could ask you to move straight on to the next slide, that would be great. Brilliant. So WCVA, obviously a national membership body for the voluntary organisations across Wales. We exist to make a bigger impact together, really. And so we saw the Kickstart scheme launched, and we thought we need to be able to ensure that our local voluntary organisations and not-for-profit organisations can access this brilliant opportunity. So what WCVA can do is, as it's been described before, put forward applications from a number of organisations to make up to the 30 job roles required for each request. We do that through an online application portal called MAP at WCVA. It's a very simple, streamlined application, which then means that we can collect some information from you about the job roles, what support mechanisms you have, and just start a conversation with you, really. We then, when we've resolved anything and we've answered all our queries, we will then put the application on the DWP online portal. WCVA will also be there to help publicise your positive stories, gain information from you, and support you as best we can to ensure those young people are getting a meaningful placement. We capture all of this information on our bespoke project data system, PDS, which is where it's an online portal, sorry, which is very, very secure. It has individual logins so that we can capture the young people's data without it being at risk of being you know, lost through emails and things like that. It's very, very secure, and you can keep the whole project, the whole Kickstart placement information on there and keep it as the journey of that young person. We're also going to rely on the experience and the expertise of the local organisations with the training and support mechanisms they all have with young people. So the £1,500 for the support payment will be entirely given to each organisation per placement to use how you demonstrate to us you need to use for that young person. So, for example, exactly as Jade had mentioned before, if it's entirely all for equipment, then that's how you use it. We will not dictate to you how you use that £1,500 at all. When we have the online application, we have a number of questions. The first one is making sure that that placement does not replace existing employees. We obviously don't want to put anyone else's employment at risk, but also it's not replacing a recent redundancy. That's really important. These roles should be created to give young people an opportunity. And as Jade has already mentioned, these are 25 hours per week paid at national minimum wage, but WCVA are also a real living wage employer. So we do encourage people where they can to increase that payment. What we will also say is we do expect that the job roles are commensurate with national minimum wage, if that is what you're going to be paying. So for example, if you wanted someone with a specific set of skills, or your expectation for the role was quite high, then the salary should be reflecting that expectation for the role. And that's one thing we will work out with you before we submit that application to DWP. Okay, can I ask you to move to the next slide, please, David? Okay, so the second element, we're talking about these quality support mechanisms that we know that the third sector provide. It's where you can tell us about, you know, your own internal processes. Do you do support and supervision meetings? Will you build in that element of CV writing, making sure that the whole journey for that young person is about building their employability and focusing on the next step after that 6-month placement? And again, the application that you submit on MAP, if we feel that there's a few more questions about it, we will come back to you. We'll have an email conversation with you. Can I ask you to move to the next one, please? Okay. So if you are approved, so you know, we're all happy with the data you've provided, we submit to DWP and they do get back to us and approve the Kickstart placements. What we will do is we'll set you up on the project data system, PDS, and you can capture the basic information about the young person on there. So the things that we would be looking for is their national insurance number, you know, the job descriptions you will have already provided at this point, but also their signed contract of employment. And then you can capture on there any development support that you have given them and qualifications that they may achieve with your support. The £1,500, as Jade has already mentioned, once we have confirmation of employment of a young person, that will be released to you through the PDS system. If we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, and again, I am just repeating what Jade has said, but obviously it is supposed to be on a monthly basis for the reimbursement for the salary costs. So for example, following month one's payment, DWP have confirmed to us that they expect to release payment by week 6, and this would be a rolling process. Can I ask you to go to the next slide? Yes, so if I can leave you with any message from WCVA, the priority for us is that obviously using this placement will help build your organisation, but the focus for us is to ensure that that young person has a really positive experience, that if you are unable to sustain that employment with them following the 6-month placement, that they are still leaving with a host of new skills that they can put onto a CV and hopefully gain sustainable employment in the future. On the last slide, you'll see the contact details we have and the link to our online application portal. And my direct telephone number. So I'm the one that's leading on this for WCVA. Feel free to call me. I work Monday to Friday, so I should be around. I can't guarantee there will not be a 4-year-old in the background, but I will answer as many questions as you have. And just to confirm, we're here to support any voluntary or not-for-profit organisation, Pan Wales, to access the scheme. Thank you, David.
Oh, that's great. Thank you very much, Sian. Can I ask the speakers to unmute themselves, actually? We've had a couple of good questions coming through from the chat there. I'm going to start with Joe Bartlett's question, and I'm going to aim it initially at Sian and Ryan. So could a consortium of small businesses, social enterprises apply to do just one gateway placement through your systems?
So with WCVA, I'll jump in on that. Yes, as long as the best way to do it would be to pick a lead organisation on that one, and then come to us. And we have already, I forgot to mention, we have put in 2 applications through DWP already for 93 job roles. A number of those are one lead organisation who are looking to place individuals in job roles with partnership organisations. So that's the best way it would work through WCVA.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, nothing further to add really, in terms of we just want to encourage more organisations to take advantage of the initiative. You know, I think there's the real added value here for us as gateway providers, and also for, you know, the host employer, you know, so whatever form that takes, then we'd be happy to have that discussion.
Okay, that's great. So the next one is for Jade, and 2 people have asked a very similar question, really. Younger people who are not currently on universal credit, one, could they approach somebody directly to work on this scheme? And initially, does the young person actually have to be on universal credit in the first place, or can anyone fill the post? And so if Jade, if you can start with that. Yeah,
right. Yeah, at the moment, it is those who are wholly unemployed on universal credit who are eligible for the Kickstart scheme. Those individuals are identified using the universal credit portal, and work coaches. Referral for Kickstart placements must be referred by work coaches in job centres. And once the placement information has been approved, and then the information is uploaded on the universal credit platform, where work coaches will know what placements are available in the locality, and then have meaningful discussions with the customers then on which placements they would want to apply for. Customers can apply for a number of placements, like they would do jobs, and then obviously they will have an offer of a placement, and they will decide then which placement would be more suitable for them.
Okay, thanks, Jade. As a follow-up to that one, the most recent question is, do you have the opportunity to interview for the role as an employer, or are you assigned a young person? So I'm assuming from that there is an element of interview available?
Yeah, there is, and there's an element of, you know, normal recruitment process that you would have in your business. So if you would normally request CVs initially, then you could go down that route and then interview from a selection of CVs. That is information that's stated on the information on the sort of display information on the universal credit platform. Yeah, so, and you could also put a cap on referrals as well. So if you only wanted to sort of have 5 people referred, you could put a cap on the referrals as well. If you wanted 10 people referred, you could do that.
Okay, that's great.
David, can I add just something just quickly there? But also, we understand that Kickstart scheme at WCVA isn't covering a whole host of young people that are just considered economically inactive. There is WCVA are an intermediate body for WEFO running the active inclusion scheme, and under that scheme it supports it's young people as well, but also anyone who is economically inactive or unemployed. So there are a number of organisations that run supported employment placements under that scheme, or you can also be funded under the Active Inclusion Project as well. So I can send those details on to David if you'd like to look into that.
That'd be great. I'm happy to circulate those.
Yeah. Could I just also add that Jobs Growth Wales is still in existence as well? You know, this is a new scheme from government, but Jobs Growth Wales is in existence as well. So if you have a young person who is not on universal credit, but economically inactive, then they can register the Careers Office, and then they can access Jobs Growth Wales opportunities as well.
Okay, great, thanks. Joe Bartlett again, thanks Joe. I've got a question there around the cash flow, which is key to everybody at the moment. Is she right in thinking that the host business has to find the first month's salary, then it's reimbursed by the Gateway organisation?
Do you want me to come in on that one, Jade?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. So the first outlay would be through the PAYE payment system, as a normal employee would have. So they would be paid, and then the reimbursement then will flow through the Gateway organisation to then reimburse the employer.
Okay, thanks. Just looking at Dan's question, I think that was covered earlier on, Dan, but I'll repeat it anyway. Does the host organisation get a payment for hosting the young person? There's obviously a time and resources implication of hosting somebody of this nature. And what other costs would there be?
Get a hosting. Well, they'll get the £1,500 for additional costs and any training or any equipment that young person would need. That £1,500 can be spent. You know, the government haven't said we need receipts for anything. You know, they're entrusting the employers to spend that money wisely for that young person. And then obviously it's the reimbursements then for the wages and the cost attached to that as well.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Question for me really, these placements are for 6 months, and obviously there's the intention to put a lot of young people through these placements. What support is in place for young people coming out of these placements then afterwards?
Well, from Job Centre Plus point of view, they would still have, during the placement, they will still have communication with their work coaches, because they're actual Kickstart placements. So there will still be some timely interventions with the work coach, either by digital means or by telephone, to make sure that the customer or the participant is happy in their placement. And then obviously the wraparound service would come into play then, of hopefully getting some job search activity there, with, you know, so that they can then become more, you know, get employment elsewhere. Some organisations and employers have said, no, we want to make this as a development opportunity to get some new people into our business, and they are looking at maybe keeping the right people on after the 6 months. But, you know, as I said, there's no obligation for that. But, you know, we are looking at them moving on into other employment at the end of the 6 months.
That's great. And Victoria's just asked if there's a number of young people, a sort of maximum number, I assume, of young people that one business can host.
Well, they are and through a Gateway organisation, because I'm sort of highlighting that because this is what this forum is about. There would be no sort of cap on placements to be applied for. You could actually apply for 10 placements and then stagger the starts throughout the period up until December 2021. But there is no cap through the Gateway of the amount of young people. What they would look at is if you've got 10 staff being employed, then the likelihood is you wouldn't be able to cope with 10 Gateway placements, because you would need that mentoring facility there. So they would look at, you know, the sort of, they look at the ratio, but to go through a Gateway organisation, there is no cap on the amount of placement.
As a Gateway organisation, we would want to make sure that you had a number of job roles proportionate to the size of your organisation. So one of the checks that we would be doing is obviously if you're an organisation that has 4 paid employees currently, then, you know, 1 placement would probably be a good place to start, and you can build from there. If you only had 4 employees currently, we wouldn't expect you to want to place 25, for example, because it has to be you know, ethically done. We don't want to be putting organisations under strain, and also that we want these placements to work and work well. It doesn't mean that in the future you can't come back for more placements. Organisations can come back to us a number of times to build on any initial placements that they've been approved.
Okay, and building off that, Sian, can the same young person move on from Kickstart straight into an active inclusion role?
Yes, I just saw that answer. And the funny thing is, we've been looking at it the other way. At the moment, we've been looking at how active inclusion participants can move on to a Kickstart placement. And WEFO have said that that is something that we can consider an entering employment job outcome from an active inclusion organisation's point of view, which is really, really great news. I'm going to take my glasses off because I think I'm reflecting everything at you. But yes, that's really, really positive news from WEFO that it would consider it would be one of the KPIs. Going the other way round, my gut instinct is that it would have to demonstrate a progression for that young person. So it's completely dependent on what move they are making and what active inclusion project they're moving into. So it would have to be on a case-by-case basis.
That makes sense.
Just to build on that as well, Sian's point, you know, it's about the journey, isn't it? So we've got a number of employers who traditionally host apprentices. So we would hope that following the Kickstart placement, people will move on to an apprentice, if not prove their worth and create that full-time employment. That's the ultimate aim for us.
Okay, that's great. Thanks, Ryan. I'm going to ask the question around holidays and sickness. How does that work for each of the individuals? Personally, I've made an assumption that it's down to each individual employer's terms and conditions, but I just want to check that really.
Yes, it would be under each employer's terms and conditions. Obviously, because as I said, they become all intents an employee of that business for 6 months. So yeah, so any sort of terms and conditions you already have with your existing employees would be would be there for those young people as well. We want to make this a meaningful work experience, so that there is and all the responsibilities that come with being in work as well, and then obviously and sort of meeting that criteria as well. So yeah, so that all the terms and conditions can be mirrored for a Kickstart placement.
Okay, and I've got a question here about whether or not a young person can go from one placement to another and or back into a second placement with the same employer.
We have asked this question. Yeah, we've asked this question. There's nothing to say in guidance that they can't. There's nothing to say that they can't go on to another placement. It could be something in a totally different sector. There's nothing, but then what we would hope that is that they've developed so much in that 6 months that they would get into, another employment as much as possible rather than going on to another Kickstart placement. But there's nothing to say they can't.
All right, that's great, thank you. Just got one more question that's come through, and it's a little bit further back, so I just wanted to come back to it because it's not directly related to the Kickstart scheme, but it may be that somebody on the panel can help on it. Obviously, we're going through quite a difficult time at the moment, and there are people above the age of 24 who might have recently lost their jobs and want to retrain. I know up until a while back there was the React funding system. Is there anything about at the moment that people who've lost their jobs who are 24 plus that can access? And I guess in that one's to Jade really.
Well, the government, this is the first part really of the government's plan for jobs, and there are other programs that are being developed for people who are 25 years plus. And that could be people with health conditions, any underlying issues that they may have. But there are programs in development at the moment for that age group as well.
Okay, that's great. I guess this is a bit of a watch this space scenario on that one then. Okay.
I think Working Wales would be a good place to go as well. And I keep saying it, active inclusion as well. There's those opportunities there, but Working Wales is probably a good place to start for those age groups.
Okay, that's great. If there's no more questions, I'll just ask our panel if they have any more comments they want to make before we wrap up the webinar. Jade, is there anything that you want to add?
I was just going to type in, there's when somebody's asked about whether the placements will be advertised anywhere other than JCP. No, they won't be advertised externally other than on the Universal Credit platform. and our customers won't actually have a view of the placements. It's only the work coaches who will have the view of the placements. Yes, so they won't be advertised externally at all. The 3-to-1, I just asking a question about the 3-to-1 ratio for employees for each placement. So as part of, if you were an employer, if you think about a large employer who wants to take, who can put an application for 30 placements straight away, because they've obviously got sites around the country, if you talk about Tesco's or anything like that, they will look at a 3-to-1 ratio for employees for that type of application. So if you've got a large employer who has put in a placement application for 30 places, then they would expect to have at least 90 employed staff within their business to match the 3-to-1 ratio. But we have had confirmation from the Kickstart approval team that is not the case for those businesses who use a gateway in order to manage their bid.
Okay, thanks. Okay, last couple of questions actually just come in. Can organisations currently, without any employees, use a Kickstarter scheme to employ their first employee?
They would have to look at being a limited company. And I would say I would put the bid in and have it assessed. Because, as I said, things are changing, which is why I wasn't able to do slides, because things are being added to this .gov website all the time. So I would definitely look into it and engage with a gateway in order to manage the bid.
Okay, thanks.
Can I add to that one, David? Sorry.
Of course you can, yeah.
We've had at least 2 organisations that are KICs, and they do not have any current paid employees, but we are going to be a gateway for them. It just involved a few more questions around support mechanisms, because that's our primary concern. You have to have someone on site to be supporting that young person, and again ensuring that young person's role is commensurate with a minimum wage expectation, skills and responsibility.
Okay, that's great. Okay, so we had a question there on, again, this one's for you, Sean. Somebody aiming to offer taster sessions in several different disciplines. If the placement decides on pursuing one further in more depth, would this qualify for more intensive training under active inclusion?
So let me read that question again.
So that's from Terry at 242.
Whilst the individual, I may have got the wrong end of the stick with this question, but I'll try and answer. Whilst the person is on the Kickstart placement, they're technically considered in employment and wouldn't be eligible for active inclusion, so they couldn't work in conjunction with each other. But if they were on active inclusion, if you worked with them, if they did the Kickstart placement, sorry, apologies, and yeah, like you said, you offered the taster sessions, they found an area where they really wanted to invest and build and develop on, and there was an active inclusion opportunity that married with that. That's the example we were talking about being a journey, about continuing on a route that is applicable to that person. This would only be eligible for the young people, because if you're 25 plus with the active inclusion scheme, you have to be long-term unemployed or economically inactive. So if you've just exited a Kickstart placement, that says your employment history is current, which is why we were looking at it more from progression from active inclusion into Kickstart. But for young people, they can be recently unemployed or economically inactive, so they can move backwards into an active inclusion placement, as we said, if it is in line with the best interests and the journey of that young person. Okay. I hope that answers your question.
That's great, thanks, Sean. Just to sort of pull things together then, Ryan, do you have any anything else to add at this point?
We just look forward to working with host employers over 18 months. I know we talked about the 6-month placements, but certainly there's opportunities here to stagger the start time, so potentially working over the course of the next 18 months. So again, we welcome a conversation with anyone on this webinar today who would be interested in working with us.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Well, I'm going to call the webinar to a close now, if that's okay. I hope that everybody has found this useful. I certainly learned a lot about the scheme and sort of really sort of gained an understanding of how useful it could be. Just seen another question coming in, just see if that's also some thanks coming in. That's great. So I'm going to call this to a close now. It just remains for me to say thank you to Jade, Sean, and Ryan. Thanks again for giving your time to this today. And this information will be available on our website, wales.coop/COVID-19, as soon as we're able to get it up there. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.